Hello, and I'm Kevin McGettrick, the Managing Director at Aventus Health. And I'm joined here today by Dr. Paul Stillman, our Medical Director, who is also a practicing GP. Paul, we've just had a fascinating discussion on the floor with the team to talk about the implications of the government's reforms as it relates to the NHS, not least the White Paper, and felt it would be worthwhile sharing some of our thoughts and views with the viewers today.
I think you're absolutely right, Kevin. I suppose we were all expecting something, a new government's going to have to change things, but I think we've all been taken aback, not only by the speed of it, but I think this is probably one of the most radical reforms I can ever remember, and I remember a few.
Paul, these new government proposals, they've been pushed through with breathtaking speed. Yeah. Have the healthcare professionals themselves been consulted?
No, I think it's the short answer. I think most of us felt there'd be some sort of consultation period, that we get some idea of what the proposals were, but not a bit of it. I mean, as you say, prior to this meeting, I spent the few days before trying to do as much research as I could, and I could find very little about the White Paper, and then suddenly it's there. And there's no question about, is this a good idea? This is what's going to happen.
Paul, the new White Paper is very much focused on outcomes as opposed to targets. Now, do you see this changing the basis of our product communication with GPs?
Yes, I certainly think it should. I think this really should change the way that any company that communicates with general practice thinks. The biggest fundamental change is this shift from targets, which we're all heartily sick of, but at least we can meet, and at least we have the products that say, yeah, we can achieve those targets by using therapeutic combinations, to outcomes. So it no longer matters, or it won't do in the brave new world, if you reduce certain parameters, your blood pressure or your lipid profile or whatever. The question is, does that in itself make a subsequent difference? Because if it doesn't, then the GP is not going to be interested. So if, as a manufacturer, you were producing one of the sort of therapeutics agents in that field, you need to be focusing on how you can sell the concept of the way it actually works on improving the outcome for individual or groups of patients.
Paul, GPs now will have to adapt to and possess entirely new skill sets, not least in managing budgets. Do you see a role for manufacturers in all of this?
Yes, I think there's a profound reasons that the industry ought to be considering the way in which it communicates with doctors. After all, this is all about education and support. What we've got out there is a load of doctors who very suddenly have been told in the very near future they're going to have to take on board something which some of them are going to sort of jump up and down and say, oh yeah, great, I like the sound of that. And a lot of them are going to say, wow, do I really know what this is all about? This is a large sums of money. Do I have the skills? So it's about education and support. So first of all, the companies, I guess, ought to be thinking about maybe changing their strategy to reflect that. But secondly, I think the good news is, if you look at the organisation of a pharmaceutical company, what we're talking about is the skills that they've probably got in abundance, much better than we have anyway, which is, I guess, the whole idea of organisational support, of the way that things are run, certainly about financing, certainly about communication skills, things that frankly have been sort of thrust upon us in general practice, but we aren't that good at it. But the industry, of course, spend huge amounts of their resource actually sharpening up those skills. All you've got to do now, pass it on to us.
Well, I think as you've seen, there's still some way to go to process the implications of the change coming our way, but I hope that you found this brief insight as fascinating as we did today, and thank you very much for viewing.